What's happening in Fell Road? I'm Joshua Thomas, and it's time to go into our third part of how to play Scythe, the Automa single-player version, and this time we're learning the Wind Gambit. I'm going to try to make this video as quick as I can, but there are 15 different rules that we have to go over. 15. There's 8 optional ending cards, and then, just so you guys know, that there are only 7, count them, 7 Automa cards for the aggressive actions. Now, the reason there's only 7 is because the 7th aggressive action that real players can do, which is called Toll, does not have an Automa action for it. So when you start a game, that's why you're supposed to draw one of these cards randomly instead of drawing one of the cardboard cards that the players actually use. So that's what that one looks like. So without further ado, let's go ahead and learn more about the alternate ending rules and these awesome ships. I mean, just look at that. 360 view, here we go. 360 view. So awesome. Cannons everywhere. Beautiful, all right. So I'll move these aside. So I just finished playing a game against the Automa using airships, and it's really easy to forget about these airship rules. So you definitely want to make sure you put these cards somewhere where you're going to notice them. Now, for each of the alternate endings, the Automa may do things a little bit differently, and that's denoted on these 2 cards, the alternate endings for the game. So we'll start off going in order of 1 to 8 on those, and then we'll go into the aggressive actions that the Automa can do. So number 1 is Land Rush, and Land Rush is unchanged. So the way Land Rush works is the first player to control 10 or more different territories at the end of their turn, or the first player to get 6 stars on the triumph track is going to be the person who ends the game. This seems like a card that is going to give the Automa the upper hand, because the Automa, their special teleportation, can grab land really quick. So very simple for card number 1, the Land Rush ending. The Factory Explosion ending, the Automa changes it up. Well, I'll show you what the players get to do. The first player to get 5 or 6 stars on the triumph track during their turn will gain 5 coins and complete their turn. Continue playing until each player has taken 2 more turns, and then the factory explodes. Now, players, for each of their units in the factory and the 6 surrounding hexes, the factory explodes, and all of the units except for airships pretty much have to retreat. Let's face it, they're destroyed. For each one that the player has in one of those 7 hexes, they will gain popularity. But since the Automa's popularity is stuck at 10, instead, they are simply going to get 4 coins. And there is no number 4 coins, so there we go, there's the nice metal coins. Oh, and I should mention, in case you're wondering, I am using the board extension, so if you want to take a look at what the board extension does for the airships, I mean, look at these airships. The airship is as long as a single hex on the larger board. So I highly recommend, if you get the Wind Gambit, to get the board extension as well. Onward to number 3, the Spoils of War. The Spoils of War reads, whenever a player places a star on one of the 10 categories of the triumph track, if it is the first star in that category, the player gains 5 coins. Now, this is a lengthy one for the Automa. The Automa gains extra coins like the human players. However, since the Automa doesn't normally put stars on all of the track, things go a little bit differently. So I'll show you how it goes way over here. Let's put it over here. So the first thing you're going to do is flip over one of the Automa's cards, and in the 0 to 7 range, you'll see that there is a number 5, so that's how many spaces we're going to move the star on the tracker. So we're going to take another star, and starting in the first space, we're going to count, excluding places where it already has a star, and the combat and power sections, because it can already gain a star that way. So we're going to go 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it lands on the popularity track, and it prevents the human player from gaining extra resources in that manner. Aside from that, the game still ends in the same way. The first person to get $40 or the first person to get 6 stars on the Triumph track is going to trigger the end of the game. Number 4 is the King of the Hill. Now, the way the King of the Hill works is the first time each player controls the factory at the beginning of their turn, they may place a star on this resolution tile. So this resolution tile counts towards being an extra star for whoever lands on it. Now in King of the Hill, it is unchanged, but note that this resolution can make the game easier against the Automa. I'm not exactly sure how it can make it easier against the Automa. I mean, I get that it's an extra place to put a star, but in the games that I've played, especially when I tried to up the ante against myself, the Automa is usually the first person to get to the factory, so I'm not exactly sure how that's supposed to make things easier. Onward to number 4. Oh, I'm sorry. Onward to number 5, which is Deja Vu. In this one, in a normal game, once all of the encounter tokens have been removed from the board, you add them back in. So you go around, and as long as one of the player characters isn't there, you simply add all the tokens back. However, when playing against the Automa, you only go until either all of these tokens are off the board, or, once again, when someone places their 6th star on the Triumph track. So that triggers the end of that game. For Mission Possible, which is the 6th card, during setup, place one of the Automa stars on either of the 2 objective cards. Other than that, the Automa does not complete objectives. So this seems kind of like it's making it easier for the Automa, even though it doesn't say that it's doing that. But if you look at this, Mission Possible basically gives you 2 other objectives that you can try to complete using stars, which is simply 2 of the objective cards added up next to the Triumph track. So if the Automa already starts off with a star on one of these, that just leaves 5 more stars for them to have to get. It seems like it's going to be harder for the player, but I don't know. And number 7 is the Doomsday Clock. So when playing against the Automa, you can literally just use another one of their cubes to track the Doomsday Clock. Now, the Doomsday Clock rules are unchanged, except once again it says that it might make it easier against the Automa. And I'm not even sure how, because easy mode gives you 4 more possible turns to complete, so having the Doomsday track is almost like playing in hard mode. It gives you just 1 extra step. And in my experiences playing against the Automa, they're pretty aggressive and can usually gain points pretty quickly. So maybe I'm just playing with the wrong set of rules. You know, some of the rules are optional. But either way, it's unchanged from there. So play with normal rules and with the normal Automa rules. And then finally, Backup Plan. Backup Plan allows you to count up your score once someone has placed their 6th star, and if that player isn't the winner, everybody takes another round, discards all their coins, and there's a bit more of counting to do at the end. So with backup plan, the rules are unchanged, and note that this resolution can make the game easier against the Automa. Once again, it says here that it might make the game easier. Well, I'm not so sure. I guess it just depends on what rule set and what difficulty mode you decide to play with. Now, those are all of the alternate endings to the game, so let's get in to something that might be a little bit more tricky, and that is the rules for the airships themselves. So once again, we're going to start off by going right down the card count from number 1, which is Bombard. Now in Bombard, which is the one that I just played, I really enjoyed it because I enjoy being able to utilize resources to help weaken the enemy's power. It came in handy big time when I played against the Automa this time. But once again, the Automa don't take resources, so how are they going to use this Bombard? Well, I'll just go straight into their combat abilities. First off, their ability is that the Automa initiates combat in a territory adjacent to the airship. The airship moves in to combat also. So it'll move into combat. But before combat, you draw and discard the Automa card. The enemy loses a power equal to the number of combat cards shown in the combat section of that card. So in this case, the combat section shows that there's 1 combat card, and that's how many points I would lose from my power before combat initiates. So it's actually not too bad. It's much more beneficial to you as one of the players. Other than that, their valid territories are territories that have a combat unit in it closest to enemy combat units. So in this case, I would move my airship right here so that it can be with this combat unit in case it decides to attack. Number 2 is Bounty. Now for the player, the bounty says before you engage in combat on your airship's territory, you may pay 1, 2, or 3 resources from your airship to move 1, 2, or 3 of your units from anywhere to here. So I can pay to have my units move in when combat is initiated. But what does the enemy do? Well, if the Automa initiates combat on a territory adjacent to its airship, move the airship to that territory. So, just like before, if our enemy unit is here, it moves into combat, and the airship moves into combat too. So in another situation, let's say that it's here and the airship is next to it, it moves in, and the airship, because it's adjacent, also moves in as well. The Automa plays an extra combat card also on this turn, which it's definitely going to hurt, especially if you're playing really aggressively. Once again, the territory movement is closest to the enemy, so once again, in a situation like this, the airship would move here. Next, we're moving on to Siege Engine. In Siege Engine, the movement is a little bit different. Its movement is any territory in the neighborhood of any Automa unit or adjacent to the Automa airship. So adjacent to the Automa airship means any of the 6 hexes surrounding the airship if there's no other valid moves. And of course, closest to the factory and normal reading order are the tiebreakers. Also, 2 new tiebreaker rules are if it's in the territory of the Automa's ship, and as long as it's not in a territory containing the enemy ship. In Siege Engine's ability, it's same as the human version. So the human version reads, an opponent may not move their character or mechs out of your airship's territory unless they pay you 1 coin per unit moved. So it's kind of like paying a bounty, even though bounty is a different card. Yeah. Anyway, if the Automa has no coins, ignore its character's mechs that are on a territory with an enemy airship while performing the select unit step of the movement action. So if I move my airship over to their enemy units, these guys can't move off if the Automa has no coins. This might be a good tactic to use against the Automa because the Automa loves farming coins, and anything you can do to get rid of them, well, that's going to help you out in winning the game. Number 4 is Distract. As the player, you can't lose popularity for interactions with opponents that happen on your airship's territory, which is awesome, so you can attack a place with workers in it and not lose anything. So in Distract, the airship has no special abilities, but its movement has a lot more rules to it. The valid territory is a territory of the Automa combat unit closest to an enemy worker, just like several of the others. Enemy workers on bases are ignored unless no enemy workers are on the board itself. So, if it's being super aggressive and all my workers are over here on my home base, what can happen is the enemy ship can move over here to kind of blockade my workers, because that's the only logical space to move to, as long as it can follow the other rules. If after this procedure the airship is on a territory adjacent to an enemy worker, whether it changed territory or not, move the airship and combat unit to the enemy worker's territory and attack. The tiebreakers for selecting a worker to attack are no combat unit on its territory, most workers, closest to factory, and normal reading order. So once again, what does that mean? Well, if we have workers over here, we move adjacent to it. We've got the most enemy workers right here with no combat units, so it's going to move in for an attack. So that is going to be some pretty crazy movements for the airship, for the Automa. Number 5 is Espionage. Espionage for the player goes like this. Before you engage in combat on your airship's territory, you may pay 1, 2, or 3 resources from your airship to draw 1, 2, or 3 cards, or you may pay 2 resources from your airship to play 1+ card in combat. If your airship has resources on it, you can pay to draw more combat cards, or use an extra combat card in your attack. So for Espionage on the Automa's side, if the Automa initiates combat on a territory adjacent to its airship, move the airship to that territory once again. After you've chosen your power and combat cards to spend, but before the Automa has, draw and discard an Automa card. If the combat card section on it shows at least 1 card, the Automa gains 1 combat card. If the resource section has at least 1 resource, it plays an extra combat card. Ouch. So let's draw a random one here. And you can see that it shows 1 combat card, so the Automa gain 1 extra, and it's got 4 resources here, so that's another one that the Automa can play. Ugh, that's kind of hurtful. Its only movement rule is pretty much the same as several of the others. You move to the combat unit that is closest to the enemy. Reading order and all those other tiebreakers apply. Number 6, the Blitzkrieg. Oh, this one's a lot of fun when playing against other players. Basically, in the Blitzkrieg, your airships can get into combat with each other, and they have a normal fight, just like the ground units would, except it's just airship to airship. So, with the Automa, their movement valid territories are territories in the neighborhood of any Automa unit which do not contain an enemy airship. Once placing the airship on a destination territory, if after this procedure the Automa has at least 8 power and its airship is adjacent to an enemy airship, it moves to that airship's territory and starts airship combat. So we've got the factory here, the enemy airship moves in adjacent to it, and it just says, you know what, we're going to go ahead and have ourselves a little battle. That's going to be fun. Now, In combat, the Automa uses at most 1 combat card and doesn't lose anything when winning. An attacking enemy who wins loses 1 popularity. Ouch, that sucks. Once again, we're skipping over number 7, the toll card, because the Automa doesn't have a toll card. And we're moving on to number 8, War Correspondence. So with normal players, the War Correspondent goes like this. After combat, on your airship's territory between any players, gain 1 coin per worker on your airship, plus 1 coin. The movement rule is territory of the Automa combat unit closest to an enemy combat unit, so same as several of the other cards before that. And its ability is, if the Automa initiates combat on a territory adjacent to its airship, move the airship to that territory. After combat, the Automa gains 2 coins. Now it's interesting here because if the Automa's players lose, it still gets 2 coins. So you're kind of at a loss there, but what you gonna do? One more important rule variant to pay attention to is if all of the enemy units have been retreated back to their faction base, you've got a new set of actions that they take, which are located on the Wind Combat Automa rule card. And what's going to happen is they're either going to do an attack. Let's say the board looks something like this. They're either going to do a combat attack against a combat unit, or they'll do an attack against a worker. And then once that's done, they create their character and they gain 3 power. So that's what that looks like right there. I'll give you a second to look at it. And there you have it. That is the Wind Gambit in a nutshell. If you've got any questions as far as maybe some tiny rules that I overlooked, just feel free to comment below. If you enjoy this video and you want to see more, I've got tutorials of how to play against the Automa in the base game. Oh, dropping cards everywhere. In the base game and in Invaders from Afar. So those links will be at the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll like and subscribe and check out more of our videos on Field Red Express.